impromptu podcast.
Yeah.
Pizza and podcast.
Yeah.
That's a series in itself.
Yes.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Steph Wallace. I live in Ballarat, Australia. I'm a potter. I work with clay. I make things out of mud.
So some pretty
that's all
cool
about
stuff.
me. Yeah?
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah,
Because we met you at the Clay Collective shop,
That's right.
which is, we're in Ballarat. Ballarat's got the Heritage Festival and the UNESCO Creative Cities, Craft and Folk Art. But the Clay Collective is you and 14 others, 15 in total?
Yeah,
Tell
it's
us
a
a little
little
bit about that.
initiative. Yeah. So Ballarat historically has had a really amazing institution teaching ceramics, two institutions.
Okay.
So what's happened is like all of these students have come to the area for a very long time and then learnt all these skills and like stayed here. And I also think it's not an accident because we're sitting on a really amazing clay seam. And I was chatting to someone from the Australian Ceramics Association, and they said there are these hot spots of ceramic artists and potters around the country. And like whether we know it or not, we seem to flock to those areas where like, you know, the potteries have been there historically because of the clay.
Yeah.
But it's the clay under our feet that brings us all there or something. I don't
Right,
know.
okay.
I don't know.
Something in the water up there that just pulls you
right,
out.
yeah,
Right,
it's like magnetic. Oh, clay.
Well, that's how Ballarat's here, right? Because of the gold rush and
That's
what's
right.
in the ground, right?
That's right, yeah. The gold seams and the quartz seams and the minerals that make the clay all come up volcanically together at the same time. So they sort of go hand in hand, yeah. And Ballarat is the city of gold. Like right under this studio, they are mining right now. Like,
Yeah, we were told that by Tara, weren't we?
Yeah,
Actually
they're still actively mining, right?
yeah, like the whole house shakes at about 2 p.m. every day. Like everything rattles on the shells because they're blasting. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, there's so much gold down there still. They're just like,
Every time to just start like digging
Yeah,
just like get out the
down.
detector.
Hey, your mixer's got a big
People
drill bit on the end there.
people do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my husband's dad in the 80s, when they brought out the good detectors, like he made his fortune in gold, you know, like he just found all these nuggets. And a few of them are in the collection of the Red Trade Centre because they also house the gold collection. Yeah. So, I mean,
Incredible, yeah, the history. We've been getting
Yeah, got quite a lot of the history on it. It's a pretty cool place.
that is a cool place.
you have to say that because, like, I love
But
it.
it genuinely is, like, you know,
Yeah.
we've enjoyed our time here.
But we don't have to say that because you're not originally from here, are you?
No. I'm what they call a POM. I'm English.
Right?
Tell
grew
us
up,
how did you end up here?
It's a long story, so I'll abbreviate.
Nah, let's go full. Let's go full then. Let's have it.
No, come on, it's late, the fire's on, it's warm, you might end up falling asleep. I grew up on a council estate in Leeds. And Leeds, England, yeah. And I went to Edinburgh Uni, well, it was called Edinburgh College of Arts at the time, to do a degree in ceramics, because I thought, like, if I don't do it now, I might never get to do it. Like, I had no responsibilities, I didn't have a mortgage. I'm like, why not do the thing that lights you up? Because it might be your only chance.
Like it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, I had then a degree in ceramics. And I was like, what the heck am I going to do with this? Yeah. And I needed a job because of all that student loan stuff.
Yeah.
So I got a job in the States teaching on summer camps. And I would like teach the summer session to these kids, teaching them pottery and ceramics. And then I would like stay on and use studio facilities.
Right.
Yeah. And then through one thing after another, I ended up running out of visa in the States.
Right.
Yeah. And also like kind of not really loving living there. And I had a friend from Edinburgh who was coming to Sydney, and he was like, just buy a ticket. I'll just meet you in the airport. And I'm really bad at scheduling. So I was 24 hours late because I couldn't like figure out the time difference. They just waited for me in like the arrivals lounge like 24 hours. Yeah, so we travelled around here a bit and I just fell in love with it. And he moved on and I was like, I'm going to do anything in my power to stay here. I love it here. Australians are so down to earth and daggy, and I was like,
This is a bit of you.
Yeah, I'm down to earth and daggy.
That's it.
I love it.
So when you came here, did you come here to be a ceramic artist? Like, see, you were doing all the ceramic stuff back then. You're obviously teaching. Did you ever think about having your own studio?
Oh yeah, well it's a dream for every like creative nerd, isn't it? But I didn't have for a long time. In fact, I had to give up ceramics because I was renting and traveling around and all that stuff. So I had various creative iterations, but it's only been in like the last 2 years that I've bought the gear. Well, I bought a house, so I could install a good thing. So I could, hardwire in that kiln and not have my landlord freak out about his insurance or whatever. So I came back to it fairly recently, but it is a hot and heavy love affair for me. Like I am in. I am madly in love,
and you can totally tell. You really can.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Oh, aye. Yeah, you can tell, Steph. You're slightly passionate about it.
But it's amazing.
In the best way. I'm not taking the piss.
Let me talk to you about clay. Everyone will listen.
That's exactly why we've ended up here a week later after meeting you. That's exactly why we're here.
Yeah, you're great.
Yeah.
So how did ceramics look for you though? Like how did it? Because you've now got some pieces in the Ballarat gallery.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And I'm well aware it's not like, well, maybe it is. Maybe you're just going to be like, I was just create it from the start. But like, how did ceramics look at for you from what you wanted to do when you were at uni versus teaching versus here? How's that all come to be? Because that's not a straightforward path, right? Especially when you're down tools for however many years.
Yeah, that's right. And in that time I had a child as well. And my child's pretty high needs, so it is a full-on job. Like, it is exhausting. And I did have a lot of grief around that, actually, where I was like, I've been this, like, I had kids in my mid-30s, so I was used to being an independent human. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, like, what am I doing with my life? Like, regretting my choices,
Right, okay.
Yeah, but, I don't know, like, what was the question?
How's your ceramics journey looked? Like, I think a lot of people, especially when they start ceramics, and this is not a bash on stoneware because you see some amazing stoneware, but it seems that certainly at the minute, everyone starts with stoneware. That's what they want to do because that's what we see a lot of. It does well, etc., etc. But we're starting to see some really cool stuff come out, some very different stuff. How's that all look for you?
Well, I think there's been some innovations in the industry because it used to be earthenware, which is bright, cheerful, colourful, the stuff you'd buy in the supermarket, and then it would be stoneware, which was serious art and really influenced by Asia, by Japanese, that aesthetic. And in the UK, the studio pottery scene of the Bernard Leaches and the Lucy Reed, like that made that really popular. And then I reckon it's only recently in the last 10 years, and there was porcelain. Which is like a whole flex in itself, It's like notoriously fickle. It's kind of a bit of a show off, like, I mean, it's a flex to your other clay nerds, not a flex to anybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because of the complexity to use it.
Yeah, like it's tricky. It's a tricky thing. So like you have to fight it a lot. And
was that the plates that you made for the?
Yeah, I did, and I deeply regretted working in that material.
So to give people context, the City of Ballarat, they do for the event, the craft lab, they do a great takeaway. So basically, people get to dine with handmade plates, cutlery, cups, and it was just it was amazing.
And then you get to take it all home, don't you?
Well, we
didn't, but.
Oh, what?
No, we didn't. But anyway,
I'll post them too.
No, we were really lucky to go with someone else couldn't make it. So we got the last minute invite for Tara, which was amazing.
I'm thrilled to hear that. I'm thrilled you're on the table that I meant the place.
They were really nice.
Oh, stop it.
Red's my favourite colour as well.
Really?
So it's perfect.
Oh, it's serendipitous.
Yeah, you loved it. It was absolutely fantastic. And it was actually really cool to see a city, is it City of Ballarat? It's City of Ballarat, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do something like that where, so for context, it was 4 tables of 10.
Yes.
4 tables of 10, 4 different artists.
Yeah, they're commissioned and paid to make that dinnerware. You get a fancy dinner. And basically, all that tableware is free because I think the ticket of the dinner just covers the food and the drink. But they think about, that team thinks about it as a gateway drug.
It absolutely
is. Like, or appreciation of craftsmanship.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that's been going on around here this week has been gateway drug-esque. Like,
I love that.
Everyone round that takeaway area had like a little ducat that had just enough of their stuff on show that you're like, oh, well, we'll check that out a little bit more.
Yeah,
Which
that's
is
right.
cool.
Because I don't know if it's true around the world, but here in Australia, people pay good money for food and drink.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
they really love their food and their drink. And it's about like, well, you can have that and that's really beautiful. And while you're enjoying that, let's educate you as to the value of this other thing as well.
Yeah.
And hope that you get hooked because, I mean, we're all deeply addicted, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yes.
This might be a problem.
The gateway drug works.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes, it
And then you get so far down the rabbit hole, and I think a lot of makers are the same. We're certainly the same. Where we're so far down it, it's almost angering to understand that other people don't get it.
Yeah.
It's so annoying when other people don't. Which of course they don't get it. They're not in that world, right?
So
But-
it's up to
right.
us to educate that there
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, but that's an overwhelming task.
Yeah.
I mean, making the thing is like a huge undertaking already without having to like contextualize and justify and like,
Yeah.
you know, explain to somebody why your prices have to be sustainable. And, you know,
How have you found that journey for yourself?
it's been really tricky. I have a lot of tension around pricing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I have a little bit of like money trauma or something, you know.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I struggle with it all the time. But actually, what's really helped me in that journey is working with other organisations
Yep.
who already have audiences that are educated. Like they have done the work there.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this at the Mayor's dinner last night,
That's
didn't we?
right. Yeah.
Just
yeah.
name drop the Mayor's dinner.
Yeah. Because you're special guest of
We're
the
all
mayor.
we're all pretty special in this room today. Yeah, so we were talking and that's I think that was the spark because we spoke to you a fair bit through the week, but we're like, this is the bit we need to make sure and capture
Yes.
on the podcast. So
Yeah.
let's get this out of the way
Yeah,
early
let's
doors.
do this bit.
You realised, maybe not early on, but you realised quite a good way of approaching custom, not necessarily customers.
It feels like an epiphany to me. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited by it. If this is really obvious to everyone else, forgive me for being like behind.
That wasn't that obvious to me.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't that
No.
obvious to me.
So you've talked a little bit about this, what they call the Craft Lab experience, which is this like flagship event of UNESCO City of Craft and Folk Art, yeah? And then through that, part of the artists that participate get some like professional development with an organisation called Craft Victoria, which is a bit like British Crafts Council or
Okay, yeah.
that equivalent. And so I had a meeting with them 2 years in a row talking about where I was at, what my goals were and how I wanted to get to those goals. And at the time, my work and myself were not ready to work with them, you know, they have a really clear vision of what their audience wants and needs and the work that they can, you know, that they can sell basically.
Yeah, okay.
So then 2 years later, I'd had a piece accepted into a National Emerging Artists Prize, and they just contacted me out of the blue and said, hey, we love this work. Would you be interested in doing some for us? And I was like, I have no work. I have nothing ready, but I'm just going to say yes. So I delivered a couple of pieces, and then that day they got picked up by an interior designer that was outfitting a hotel in Singapore, as you do, right? And another one was loaned by the stylist for Vogue Living for a photo shoot, okay? So they called me up that day and I was camping with my kid, like not in this, you know, the business zone. And they're like, would you do a show? Would you do a whole show, maybe like 20, 25 pieces in 8 weeks? And I was like, oh my God, like, no, I can't do that. I've got no work. Like everything I do have is earmarked for other stuff, but I'm just going to say yes.
Good for you.
And I'll figure it out. Yeah. You know that feeling?
Yes.
Because because there's so much rejection in this industry that when someone gives you an opportunity, you can't knock it back. So I was like, yeah, that'd be great. So what I discovered through that experience is they had this really amazing client base. So, you know, they take 50%, but all of those clients were willing to spend a couple of $1,000s on a pot, on a piece of ceramics.
Okay.
And ceramics is notoriously problematic for pricing because of our attachment to functionality Like, if you can use it as a vase, it's not fine art, and fine art pricing structures, you know.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I've never looked at it that way. Makes sense.
And I think
a cup's a cup. I mean, a good ceramic cup is not just a cup, but on the bare essence of it, a cup is a cup.
Yeah, and I think that's a very Western perception. I don't think that's true necessarily in, say, Japan. Like, I think they have a different appreciation. But anyway, all of that story is to say that what I realised is rich people exist and rich people engage other creative professionals to buy stuff for them. So these interior designers were often the gateway between the rich people and me. So not only did these clients of theirs like want to flex their wealth, but they also are buying taste from their designer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. So they might not be the most tasteful person, but they want to look
they
really
might not
tasteful.
have a clue, but they're like, oh, we'll just engage such and such to do this project, and then we'll look like we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So what I discovered is, like, I don't have to like do this hustle of selling like, you know, $20 mugs online, which is not sustainable for many, many reasons. I can like make really beautiful statement pieces, and there's an audience for that. And I have to sell like one piece as opposed to 200 mugs.
Yes.
So that's the really interesting bit, isn't it? Because so many people would be like, oh, but there's not as big an audience for that. Everyone needs a mug. But you don't need the big audience.
No, I don't want the big audience.
No, you
I
don't
can't
want it,
serve
right?
that.
Yeah,
I don't want that hustle, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So since then, someone saw my work at that show who was a stylist for an architecture magazine, and she came and loaned some work. It got starred in some beautiful homes for this shoot.
Okay.
And then one of the home owners reached out and wanted to purchase a piece. And I'm like, okay, like I get this. And that piece I'd actually rejected from an exhibition because I didn't think it was quite right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was like really wrestling with it. And I was like, oh, I don't know. So it taught me a few things. One, I think my standards are a bit ridiculous. Just because I don't love something, doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. But also that like there's a whole industry there that I had completely not thought about or recognized, that have a desire and are actively seeking beautiful things at higher price points. Because, I don't know, maybe rich people don't want cheap things.
Maybe.
Cheap is subjective.
Yeah.
But actually saying, I paid a lot of money for this is part of their status. You know, that's how they are showing their worth in the world. Or something. So this has blown my mind, and it's a very, like, this has only happened in the last 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
But it's completely changed my approach to marketing my business, which opportunities I pursue. Because instead I was worrying about how am I going to pay those bills? I've got to hustle and move these lower priced items because they're accessible and affordable, and I get like a volume model to an elevation model. Like, how can I, like, what opportunities do I need to pursue to elevate this thing even further so that my pricing can become more and more and more sustainable?
Good for you.
You've gone quiet. What is happening?
Because it just makes so much sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it does make so much sense. Handmade things, I believe everyone should be able to access handmade things, but giving yourself the freedom by doing high-end things is giving yourself the freedom and the sustainability to actually be here.
That's right. And I mean, some people love that model of volume.
Yeah.
Some people just really love making a lot of work and getting into as many hands of people as possible. But that doesn't suit my life.
And that's...
Like, I don't want to be a production potter. I want to be an artisan.
Yeah.
I want a slow, boring life. Thank you very much.
And that's cool. What has that afforded you in time to experiment and stylise your work and push new things? Because you're not chasing the, I've got 200 mugs to do this month. That must be massive.
Yeah,
a lot of
it's a
people
huge
fall into
shift.
the trap, and we talk about this a lot. Like, a lot of people fall into the trap of they become, like you say, production potters. They're too busy making stuff to create. Does that make sense? They're too busy making stuff to be creative.
They become almost a manufacturer.
Yeah.
And I don't say that in a snobby way, but
No.
I mean, it becomes a process of making many, many, many things. Yeah.
Yeah.
You lose your creativity a little bit. It's like-
Yeah, you do. And I mean, you see this from the outside. I bet you meet lots of makers where you're like, I don't know, we approach something from maybe a bit of a scarcity mindset, like, oh, we can't stop, we've got to keep going, we just need to make more and get more sales. But the more sales you have to get, the more energy you have to put into your marketing and your admin and your bookkeeping and all those other things that personally do not bring me joy.
No,
Yeah.
no, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
You know, I before I used to do, driving online, before I came back to ceramics, I was painting, and it was like a real sweet spot. Here in Australia, our lockdowns were incredibly long. There were bits here and there, but I mean, Melbourne was locked down for like 6 months of the year.
Yeah.
So all these, what I call yummy mummies, which are like affluent parents, had nothing to do but make their homes pretty. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
there was this real uptick in online sales across Australia of beautiful objects and handmade things, because people wanted their spaces to be
Couldn't go on
delightful.
holiday, so they had the money, right?
Couldn't go on holiday. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've forgotten where I was going with this train of thought. Oh, yeah, so I was doing that, but I had to, there was a sweet spot there, but I still had to be constantly, reaching out to retailers. I had to be managing those accounts. I had to be I was still content marketing to drive traffic to my Instagram, because at the time that was the main sales driver. I still had to look at my ad spend and my conversion rates and all of those things. I now don't have to do. So it gives me the bandwidth to put into the art.
Wow, well done you.
And I have done a mind shift, actually, a little bit of shift. I feel inside that I am a maker. I didn't fit into art school. I just wanted to make beautiful things.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say big, statements about the world.
Yeah.
So I felt like a bit of a weirdo misfit,
Right.
We all have our art school trauma, I'm pretty sure. But now I've realised that there's so much validity and value in making beautiful things, as you know, and I can put all my energy into that now.
And somebody's going to take it and appreciate it and love it, and it's going to look good. And
Yeah, absolutely. And I had this almost imposter syndrome or something
everyone has that.
but I felt bad for my buyers. Is that weird? I had a moment where I sold this beautiful thing at a sustainable price point. I felt like I'd ripped somebody off, right?
Right.
So this is the money trauma piece, yeah?
Yep.
And then at an opening at that venue for another artist, I was introduced to that buyer. And it was this group of 3 women in their mid-50s, and they pool their money every year, and they buy beautiful things, and then they share them around their house. They take it in turn to
No way.
No way, that's cool.
yeah.
Never heard of
I think
that.
they call themselves a collectors group or something.
Okay.
But it was just these 3 women who were so excited to meet me, and we're we've never owned any ceramics before, and we know nothing about it, but we just fell in love with your piece, and we can't wait to have our turn to have that in our house, and now we're going to buy more, and the gateway drug stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I just I really had a moment where I was Steph, you got to stop sabotaging yourself here
Yeah,
and
because
holding
you're
yourself
good.
back.
Accept that you're good, and that
Good, and that brings joy to somebody.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that is a very fair exchange.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not ripping anybody off.
No, it's very fair. Do you think do you spend less time at the wheel now, or are you able to spend more time at the wheel,
That's a
but
good question.
being more creative? I.e., more time at the wheel, but they might not all make it to the end. Because presumably at the level you're at, every cup nigh on makes it to the end.
Yeah, pretty
There,
much,
thereabouts.
except when you're being a bit experimental.
Yeah, whereas now
yeah.
you've maybe not got that pressure to make sure everything makes it to the end.
Yeah, that's right. And it could be more discerning. And in turn, that is has a great impact on my carbon footprint, right?
Right.
Because ceramics actually has a high carbon footprint, because you're not only using the power to fire this thing, but it literally will exist forever.
Yeah.
We're finding ceramics from thousands of years.
Still here.
It is
Yeah.
here forever. So I think not having to turn the stuff out means I can be way more discerning. I mean, sometimes I'm too discerning, and I should have just let that pot go into the show, the one I was talking about before, that I was should I just smash it and put it in the bin, But it allows me more time to like really sit with the work and figure out if it's actually any good, or if I was just driven by I feel like I should make this thing. But it's allowed me to advance my skills.
Yeah.
So my thing now is teaching myself to like create much bigger work, which is technically quite tricky, and you have to practice a lot. And that thing of the 10,000 hours, but it's those hours that make something look easy, hey?
Yeah. And I think there's
It looks easy and you're like, I could do that, and then no.
and that's kind of the thing with craft, and the thing we all need to do better at educating the customer at is, because if I watch someone turn even just a basic cup or turn a bowl on the wood lathe or whatever, like it's so quick that you would think, they can knock them out 10 a day, 20 a day, 30 a day. Which is not the case. You're just seeing one little highlight glimpse of it.
And often it's sped up to look sexy and appealing and satisfying.
And all that.
When I was in America, I tried the kick wheel and I made like this little dish. And I was like, I preferred the kick wheel than the electric. Yeah, I did. I felt like I could control it a little bit more.
I feel like I'm not fit enough for it. Like,
it was quite good.
Kicking this thing around.
It's a lump. It's a big lump of concrete.
I know.
That's right.
But it was a lot harder than it looks. She was just. I was like, I can.
Alicia was very competent on it, wasn't she?
But I can see why. It's difficult. Like. You make it look easy when you were doing it the other day in the...
Did I?
Yeah.
Well, thank God, because I was sweating a little.
Like so...
I was like, this cannot stuff up because it'll be very embarrassing.
Because it was a big pot you were making, right?
Big pot, that's right.
Yeah, so if you had to learn a lot of new skills, so having a new found approach, which I think anyone listening to this will... It's definitely going to enlighten some people, that's for sure.
I think that's a good way to articulate it as well, a newfound approach.
So you've got this newfound approach, which has also led into a newfound approach in how you do stuff, because you're able to do bigger stuff. So that kind of takes the 10,000 hours, and 10,000 hours isn't enough at that point, is it? Because there's another 10,000 hours to do big stuff.
Yeah, that's very true. But I'm really driven by pursuing skills.
Right.
So you know how like...
More so than pursuing good pieces?
Yeah, probably. I mean, honestly, maybe that's just a happy byproduct. But I get a deep, nerdy joy out of like envisioning what I want to do, or like seeing something and being like, that, like I want to figure that out, and then reverse engineering it.
Right.
Like, how do I do that? And like, there's a lot of trial and error in there. But that really drives me to make more and more work. Like, I never get burnt out because there's always something new for me to learn. And I'm just like this little nerd, like putting together the jigsaw puzzle, a piece at a time, and like getting deep joy when that bit comes together in a good way.
That's cool.
I mean, sometimes one piece I've had to force in there, it doesn't really belong, but
Looked all right
really
in the
love
end.
it.
Yeah. I had a bit of a nerd out when I was looking at your stuff in the gallery, because it's obviously, I actually thought it was, you can't pick them up in the gallery, right? So I thought it was...
I mean, you shouldn't.
Yeah. Just to clarify, yours do still have the perspex. I didn't take it off, like I didn't burst them. No. But I didn't think for a minute it would be hollow, because it's, and for anyone that's listening to this, go check out the work, but it's so sharp across the top with such a small hole in it.
Yeah.
That's not the normal way you would throw a pot to the layman me. So how did you come across that? Because that's only been afforded to you by this new approach that you can do higher price items, which means you've got more time at the wheel, which means you're not producing, you're not the manufacturer.
And it might be a whole day on the wheel just to complete that process for one pot, actually, because it's, a long process.
Yeah.
But how did I...
how did you come to like? Because you basically, and you don't have to tell me what you've done if you don't want to. But
no, of course I do. I love this stuff. Let me tell you all about it.
But that's the total quotations wrong approach to how you would make a pot.
Yeah, but some rules are made to be broken.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
and also, I mean, I'm at the time, I think I was also really exploring that concept of perceived value of ceramics and functionality. Yeah, okay. And like, yeah, sure, that was in like, the city art gallery.
Yeah.
Not just like in my shed or whatever, or a little community art space. So automatically it's elevated, yeah.
Yes.
But I really wanted to explore that idea of like, is this like, what is functional? And like, could you actually really use this? Is it a sculpture or is it a, like, crossing that intersection? Yeah, I think thinking more like a sculptor. Thinking more like, okay, I don't need to make this a food safe glaze so that I don't poison somebody when they use their mug. Yeah, it's like I can just break the rules and kind of see what happens. So the forms you're talking about are kind of tall cylinders with an almost completely enclosed, really large rim. And then I cut this tiny hole in the middle.
And it's a perfect 90 degrees as well, isn't it?
It's a perfect 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Thanks for noticing. That bit brings me
I did have a
joy.
square angle finder in it.
Yeah. So I mean, that hole to me only sort of serves to like accentuate what's inside it. That there's this void inside. It's not actually about like sticking your Mother's Day flowers in it or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. But it's like an allusion to a vessel, but completely unfunctional. Yeah. But to create those forms, I had to like figure out, traditionally you'd start from the bottom up. So you'd make the foot of that thing but then all the weight of that clay would just sort of collapse. Yeah.
Yep.
Or you'd have to leave a big chunk of clay underneath its bum and then flip it over and trim all that away. But I figured out if I can build them upside down. So I throw them in the reverse so they have like a really flat bottom on the wheel head. And then I bring the walls up, I enclose them to make this encapsulated form. I put a coil of clay on to like make the foot ring. And then eventually, fingers crossed, when it's all dry enough, that sweet spot, I can flip the whole lot and then...
that gives me...
That gives me the heebie-jeebies just thinking about flipping it over.
My poor husband, because I get him to help me. I'm like, don't drop it, don't drop it.
Oh my goodness.
And he's like, oh my God,
You put too much pressure
Yeah,
on
that
it.
makes me feel really uncomfortable thinking about flipping pots over that size.
When you spent all that time.
But it's only mud, it's not a tattoo. It's not
That's true.
forever. I
Yeah,
can
that's
just
true.
mush it down again and...
do it again.
So I
know,
tell
that's
myself.
That's what you tell yourself. Do you tell yourself that when you drop it?
Too, yeah.
True. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I spent a day on this or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, I think like, I don't know if potters are just like naturally good risk takers
Right.
because you lose work all the time and it's completely outside of your control. You just put it into that kiln and it's really just fingers crossed a lot of the time. I mean, you have to make well. But things can go wrong for pretty much no reason. And one time, through user error, I lost a whole kiln load of work. And I shared a story of it on my Instagram, laughing at myself because I'd just done something really stupid.
Yeah, you want to be able to know that because, these things happen.
Yeah, and then somebody had commented that they had been like a piece of advice that someone had told them. If you're grieving the loss of this work now coming out of the kiln, you're not making enough work because you should already be obsessed with that next thing.
Okay.
And I was like, that's actually quite a helpful approach to like relinquish control of what is done and outside of your...
You need to be on to the next thing.
You should already be like so obsessed and in love with that next thing that all of your like attachment is there. Not there, not on the failure,
That's
not
a
on
really
the
good way.
explosions or the things stuck together or whatever.
So if you're grieving the work that you've just lost now, you're not making enough things because it goes to show that you're not concentrating on the next thing.
And I don't know if that's necessarily true for everyone.
No, but
it
of course.
really helped me
Yeah.
in this specific scenario because there's a very large gap between the making and the getting the finished object.
Yeah.
Because you've got to dry that. And mine are big and enclosed, so they take weeks to dry out.
Really?
Like sometimes I leave them a couple of months to just get all the moisture out of them.
Wow.
So, if I'm like worrying about that thing, I should already have 10 other things on the go, Like,
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Because if that one in like 2 months' time doesn't work, then you've kind of...
It's okay. I've got the next one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It'll be okay.
Yeah.
It'll be okay.
Yeah.
And you know this, like the more you do something, the better you get anyway, hey?
Yeah. So there's a story, fable, internet thing. and it's obviously come from somewhere. And I'm interested to know what camp you're in, although I think you've just told us. Beat me to it.
Okay.
A pottery lecturer has 2 classes.
Okay.
Class A, he says, go away for the whole semester and your only assignment is to make the best pot. Class B,
Okay.
he says, go away and make as many pots as you can. What camp are you in and why?
Well, I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, but you beat me to it. I still going to ask it.
But I mean, my reasoning is obviously the second camp is not only like making more work and building their skills, but they're also not putting pressure on themselves to be good. Because I really believe that you have to make really crappy art and give yourself permission to do that, to make great art. Yeah. Because I see perfectionism coming in all the time for people where they feel like they're not good enough, so they get paralyzed and they don't progress because they want that first thing to be the best pot ever. And all that pressure is on that. And we all know that, like, you know, that's going to be a pretty terrible pot because you're putting too much expectation on yourself and that outcome.
So you're never going to like it.
You're never going to like it. It's going to be a living nightmare for you. Like.
Yeah. It's true.
Do you think many people fall foul of that?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Do you think more so now with the likes of Instagram and Facebook where they can just see beautiful stuff all the time?
I think that was the first pot they've ever done.
Yeah, and it makes it look easy. Yeah, probably. But in saying that, I think more people are giving it a go because of those things.
Yeah, that's also the other side of it, isn't it? More people can see how accessible it is, so they are giving it a go.
Yeah. And I think in our community of potters, we're notoriously down to earth. Like, we play with mud every day, hey?
Yeah.
But what I love about it is there isn't this culture of gatekeeping of knowledge, right?
Okay.
So you'll meet masters of their field and they're like, I am about to retire and my only goal in life is to pass on all of my knowledge.
Right.
You know, so there is that thing of like the gates are open for people to learn and, you know, the sharing of information. And I do believe that social media has helped that. You know, like I often troubleshoot through social media. Okay. Like I'll be like, I am having this problem and I cannot figure out what is going wrong. Who do I know that does something or might have some knowledge? And I can directly interact with that person through this device. And I can ask them a question and they might not answer, or I can just like do a deep cyber stalk and scroll back and be like, you know, freeze that frame. That's one thing, that little hand gesture, or like how they covered that so it would dry slower.
Right,
it's
okay.
like
all the little nuances.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to know what you're looking for, hey.
Yeah,
but like, I figure, I really believe you can kind of find the answer if you look hard enough, hey.
Do you think you'd lose? So it doesn't seem like many potters study with masters anymore. No, that doesn't seem to be a thing.
No, it doesn't.
Does social media replace that, or is that something that can never be replaced, in your opinion?
No, I mean, I think across the board, really, arts education is just disappearing.
Yeah.
And I think it's an absolute sin. You know? And the irony is the demand to learn is still there, but the institutions are, at the end of the day, businesses, and arts courses are really expensive to run because you can't just shove 200 kids in a lecture theatre and like deliver to that audience. You've got to provide this equipment and it's very hands-on and they need a lot of time and attention.
But still very important. Yeah.
So important.
I mean, we're all creative in some way, you know?
Yeah.
Given the chance.
Yeah,
Given the
chance.
Given the opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, on one hand, though, maybe there is a really big opportunity for private enterprise there to fill that gap. But the gap is certainly there. Because it's not just in the higher level institutions. You're right, it's like the apprenticeships don't exist anymore. Because the manufacturing doesn't exist anymore because it's been sent offshore or whatever. Yeah, I think it's an absolute tragedy. Because, I mean, before we were recording, Kate and I were talking a little bit about that. Is that so many makers like would love to pass on that knowledge, but they can't actually afford to employ an apprentice. You know,
because like, well, you are taking time out of your own practice to help somebody else, and some people just can't afford to do that, but they really do want to pass on the skills. You know, it's it's a hard one. There needs to be some sort of support there.
And there's always the argument that the apprentice will then become good and then they'll increase your output, etc., etc., etc. But you might not have the 3 to 4 to 5 to 10 years in the bank
To do that.
to allow them to get that level.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
How do we fix it?
I have no answer to that. Sorry. End of conversation. No, I really don't know, but I'm really interested in that question because, I'm in my 40s, so I was lucky enough to just sneak in those last few years of ceramics courses. I think there's probably maybe 1 or 2 left in the whole of the UK, and they're in Stoke-on-Trent, which is the heart of, heart of ceramics, and a lot of the, I feel that they're probably really highly in demand.
Yeah, I think they are.
Yeah. And the desire is there. Like, people really want to do that. And I don't know what the answer is, because I will be honest, like, I used to be pretty, like, scarred by my art school education. I used to feel like, oh my God, like, what did I do? I was just like...
Really?
Yeah, I really struggled with it.
I don't think that's uncommon for the people we've spoke to.
Really? Yeah, I don't think it is either. I think it can really... damage, deeply damage a lot of people. However, on reflection, now when I was preparing the work for that show that we talked about earlier at Craft Victoria, I really had a sense of tapping into the skills that I learnt then, because I think something about an arts education, or like that intensity of learning a craft, the idea of repetition. Like, you don't just make one and you're done. You push an idea and you refine but if I'm just here in my studio, I don't want to end up with 20 massive pots that I then have to like what am I going to do with all that? But suddenly I had a home to send these things to. They were going to leave me and go. So I was like, I'm going to take this concept of one form, and I am just going to push that in all its different iterations and surface treatments. And I'm just going to see what happens. And I am going to make 20, 30, 40 of the same kind of thing, and just refine those skills and see what works and see what doesn't. And that reminded me, like, oh, that's a skill I learned from art school. Okay. That, you don't just do a pretty picture and you're done. It's like you take an idea and you push it as far as you can, and then beyond where you think you can take it. And that's kind of where the zone of genius is.
Yeah, concentrate on one thing and to the absolute nth degree.
Yeah, like laser focus. Like, do not get distracted.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, you're doing it at the time because you've got an assessment.
Yeah, of course.
but I mean, I was kind of reminded like that, and I was grateful once again I had the opportunity to do that. And being in the UK, I had the opportunity to learn from the technician in the mould department was like an ex-mould maker for Wedgwood. Like he had, we had the industry then there in a way that it's not now. And it's certainly not in Australia. Like, that just doesn't exist. People are coming out of ceramics courses not ever being allowed to fire a kiln because of health and safety issues,
so they're not really hands-on,
not knowing how to make their own glazes. They know how to develop ideas, but the hands-on skills are really lacking. And I feel like they're the most important stuff.
Oh yeah,
we definitely found that in our product design degree when we went to Norway for 6 months in the third year. That's when...
Oh, stop showing off. Norway for 6 months was fab.
It was great.
It was an exchange with the uni.
Look, it was
that's great. Yeah,
it was at the point where it was Jack Uni in, or they sent us to Norway. It was because we were just learning how to sketch things. Like, we could sketch a wicked bit of furniture by then. We had no idea how to put it together.
Make it. You need to understand.
No idea how to put it together.
You do, because this is a common.
And Norway was all about that,
isn't it? From engineers and makers, well, that's great in concept, but he hasn't actually thought that when this physically happens, this occurs. Yeah, great.
And that's what Norway taught us. It was big workshops to do that, and everyone was leaving there with extensive hands-on time.
And that's what kind of.
Don't know what it's like now. I imagine it's still the same because they've invested a lot of money into it, and they're not just going to let it go. They also had a great health and safety policy. It was maybe an A5 sheet of paper.
If you cut your hand off, it's not our fault.
Half of it was in Norwegian and half of it was in English.
Stay alive. Do not sue us.
It was basically like, anything that you do, you've done it to yourself, you can't sue us. Yeah, I'll sign that.
What a different approach.
They had some really clever things as well. Like simple things that would cause millions of accidents to just stop. Like the spanners to change the bits on the machines were cable tied to the end of the plug, so you had to unplug it to do it. Like, they're really simple things, right? Genius. But they solve a lot of problems with people making drastic life-changing mistakes. And they just thought about that, but they'd thought about all of this because it was Oslo and Akershus it was called high schooling, so it's like high school, but it's a university. You know, all the countries are like really weird. Well, it is. It's like college, university. They're all different across the board. But yeah, they'd basically been like, how do we get around this? This is what we want. We want hands-on skills to come out of this. And that was product design. That wasn't an arts degree. That was a hardcore product design. And I just can't get my head around why. I know why, because there's so much red tape, but I can't get my head around why, if people are, especially in some places, England being one of them, spending the money to go to university.
And it's big money nowadays.
Yeah.
Like it's, you know, and you're with that debt for a very, very long time.
You're also coming out of there with that debt for a very long time with no real way of making the money back if you want to be a potter.
No.
Because you've never had the hand, like if you're coming out now without the hands-on skills, I mean you've built the hands-on skills and got the hands-on skills so you can build a business.
That's right.
But like you can be the best theoretical potter on the planet, but what are you going to do? Outsource it to someone to make?
Yeah. And I found out recently that here in Australia, the debt that you get from an arts degree is the same debt as a lawyer ends up with.
Whoa.
Yeah, and like you're making a face, like your ability to generate income to pay that off is radically, like it's poles apart. Yeah. But I don't know, I mean, the education, that conversation I'm hearing a lot, like it is really loud in my industry. Obviously you're coming across it a lot. Like
I'm coming across it a lot here this week.
Well, because we attended the UNESCO talks, like for the creative cities, that was very much the.
And that's what I mean. Yeah. So for anyone listening to this, for context, we were invited to the UNESCO's Creative Cities sub-conference. It's a bit of a mouthful. But it was basically a lot of the different countries. Some of them zoomed in. Taiwan was there. Mongolia was there. South Korea was there. Obviously Australia was there. America. Saudi was there. Alaha and Saudi was there, and they were all talking about how they get in at that level, at the education level, and what needs to change. Like how do we either get it in at the education level to make a change, or get it in at the education of consumer level to make a change and add value. So the conversations are happening. I just hope they happen quick enough.
No, that's right, because what you end up having is like a whole generation without these skills. Yeah. And that might not be a bad thing. It might be a problem now while they're in their 20s. But like when I'm ready to retire, like these skills die with me. Yeah. Like unless that continues, like what
you could write a book on how to do it, but it's not the same as actually like.
Well, that's the tacit skills presentation, wasn't it? We sat in on the deputy head of UNESCO's Creative Cities for Craft and Folk Art. Not going to try and pronounce his name. Lovely guy, Fijinju in South Korea. His whole presentation was about, and there's some author that's written about it, name eludes me now, starts with a P.
Very specific.
Very specific. It's old. Starts, and it was tacit skills. And tacit skills are skills that have to be passed on by hand. Like, how does clay feel? You could explain to me, there's probably a good experiment there, isn't it? Like, explain to me how to make a pot without touching or without looking at what I'm doing. Like, just over the phone. Like, you'd never be able to do it.
Couldn't. I'd be like, squish the clay.
I'm like, so I'm finished. I've got
a blob.
I've got a mud consistency object. Right? That's what you would end up with, right? So there is that conversation, because the big worry is exactly what you've just said there. Like, when it's gone, it's gone.
That's right. And look, my big nerdy project at the moment is sourcing my own clay, digging my own clay.
Right.
And we've talked a little bit about this prior to this conversation. But, I mean, I felt very naive when I discovered that the Australian clay that I buy from Australian suppliers, I go and, pick it up in the ute, whatever, it's like baking, so these dry materials are sourced from all over the world, and they get shipped here and put in a big mixer, and water is added, and then put in plastic, and then it goes in the back of my car. So I'm like, oh, this clay is actually not Australian. This clay is from a huge open cut mine somewhere in India with terrible health and safety. Like, people are actively suffering. Plus, then there's the carbon footprint of transporting these materials thousands of miles so I can make a pretty pot. Yeah. And I was like, you know, that's unfortunately is just our modern way of living. Like, nothing is impact free. But then I was like, flipping out, like 80% of the Earth's surface is clay. Like, why is that a thing?
And what did you say? It's only a foot down?
So yeah, about a foot
on
down.
Average, yeah.
I mean, unless you live right at the beach. I mean, you're just going to get a sand or whatever. But yeah, you know, it's not very far down. You'll have a bit of topsoil and then it's just clay. And all clay is not created equal. It depends. Like, clay is created through erosion of rock, through weathering. So depending on what rock you started with, you know, or where the clay is, where it's found, you know, you have different qualities. But there's no such thing as a bad clay. It's just how you use it. It might be just for decorative slips or whatever. So it talked about that thing of like reverse engineering stuff. I was like, I want to figure out how to use my own clay, because it's a thing. Like, I mean, in a very hipster world that we live in, it's now called wild clay or foraged clay.
Right.
Yeah. So I know
it's clay.
It's clay. So I know a local potter who's retired now, but he used to be the head potter at what is now a hotel down the road from me, literally a couple of 100 meters that way. And I bumped into him in the pharmacy, and he didn't know who I was, but it's a small world, it's a small town where we are. And I was like, hi, you don't know me, but I heard that you use clay that you've dug in your work. And he was like, yeah, like, it's everywhere. I mean, to him, it was just like, duh, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, where should I, like, how do I start? And he's like, oh, well, that pottery there, just behind it, you know, that park with the big lake, that's an old clay mine. It's like 30 meters deep. They would just go and dig out clay and make all the tiles for all the houses in the city. So that's a really good place to start, you know? Just go fill a bucket. And I filled a bucket, and then I picked out the stones, and I figured out how to water it down and sieve it and then dry it out again. And I was like, this is the most amazing clay. Like, this is so much better than the clay I've been using that I got out of that bag.
And was it better? It was actually better to use.
It's superb. It's absolutely beautiful. It's like, yeah, like I say, like here, you know, the gold came and the quartz seams, they're together, and then the clay is in the same spot. So around Australia, you'll find where all the gold rushes were of the 1800s, you'll find loads of potteries. So here, Bendigo, Bathurst, and in Mudgee, like loads of them. And so it's not a coincidence. And I was like, I did not know that.
Nothing better than creating your work from the clay that is pretty much
That's right.
local.
And like, the ideas I'm exploring in my work are about the land.
Yeah.
And colonialism and like migrancy onto this land and finding place and connection to the earth. And I'm like, oh my God, like on that deep nerdy level, like this is just adding a whole other layer to me as a maker.
Yeah.
Like, even if nobody ever knows about this, I just feel a whole other level of connection to the work. I mean, it's very labor intensive. I can't just like fill up the car and off I go. But it makes it more worth it.
Is it more labour intensive, or is it just more labour intensive for you?
To
Because
me.
that labour still has to happen somewhere, right?
To me, exactly. That is a really good point, Jack.
The labour still has to happen. It's just you're doing that labour now.
Yeah.
But you're not paying for someone else. Yeah.
Get control of what you're using.
Yeah.
Is that a value add too? Especially now that you're going to this higher calibre customer, let's say.
Yeah.
Higher value customer.
Yeah, you're right. Because I mean, it's coming at a lower cost to me, theoretically, because I'm just digging a hole. Yeah.
And is it cheaper? Is it cheaper to buy it and sieve it?
Oh, heck yeah.
Is it?
Oh, of course.
Even by the time you put your time into it, it's still cheaper?
Yeah, I reckon. I met a really interesting chap at a conference a few weeks ago, a clay conference, as you do. They exist.
Love conference.
He's from North Carolina. So I lived in the States for a little bit. We were sort of lived very close. And he has this friend who he's a tobacco farmer. Okay. And he has nice clay in his field. So he went with his, I mean, he has ADHD like me, so this is hyper focus, but his was next level. He went with a giant tip truck and a digger and like took about a ton of clay, right? And then he does that process on his property. There's a whole team of potters that work together, and they sieve and process tons of this clay. So yeah, maybe on a small cottage industry scale, it is very labour intensive. But to be honest, the main part of the process is time.
Yeah.
So you're adding water to take out the bits you don't want, like the tree roots and the sharp rocks. Yeah. So then you've got this like slop, you've got this, bucket of mud, and you got to like wait for that to just dry out any elements. Yeah. So he's like, oh no, we just smash it out. We do a week and we'll process like a ton of clay, and that just serves us for the year, because he's like, oh, it might take 3 months or whatever, but in the meantime, I'm using.
But you just make sure you start at 3 months before the other one finishes. Yes, you've got to be a bit organised. Yeah.
But then it reminded me of something I'd heard in a documentary about some Chinese potters who, have been in this village making this ware for centuries. Yeah. And they say, as they're processing their clay, they're making clay for their children's children. They are using the clay that their grandparents made. And
so that's lineage at that point, you're talking.
Isn't it? I mean, that's really planning ahead. So maybe the extreme.
Yeah, that's cool.
But it's also like thinking about how we make this sustainable forever.
Yeah.
Let's do the labour now so in the future these skills still exist.
Do you think that's doable? Do you think it's doable for... Now I'm aware that production potteries may never take up that side of it, and that's fine. That's their own world.
Yeah, that's their thing.
That's their thing. But for everybody that is a small scale potter like you, do you think that's sustainable for us all to do?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's hard for me to say because I don't want to like make sweeping statements and assumptions about other people's situations. But I think that importing raw materials is becoming less and less and less sustainable, isn't it? So it's a payoff, and figuring out like, is this something that's important to me, or is it like I'm actually quite happy just buying a bag of clay because I need to make volume, I need to create all that work, and certainly made me, actually we talked about this a little bit earlier about like I'm more discerning. And part of the reason I'm more discerning is because I had to labour over every little molecule of that clay. So
you're being careful.
I can't just open another bag. I literally sweated and got covered in clay to make this. So this is like not so precious that it restricts me or applies perfectionism for the perfect pot. But it makes me think, actually, would this be better if I just smush this down and reuse that and like tried again and got better and like improved this? Or I'm less likely to be like, I know that's going to explode in the kiln, but I'm just going to chuck it in anyway. Because I had to make that raw material.
How do you communicate that to the customer?
That's a really good question. And I'm going to answer by saying I don't. Because now I have people that do that for me.
So that's how you do it. You find the people that do it for you, right?
Can explain
Who are crazy passionate. Yeah. And actually one wonderful thing that Craft Victoria did is they paid me to do an artist talk to their 10 staff members. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was me and a jeweler who had work in that space, and they were like, we'd like you to come and do like a little panel discussion with us without an audience. It's just us. So that we can learn about your work and be as passionate and like articulate in educating our clients as you are.
So they can take your knowledge and put their marketing spin on it.
That's cool.
That's right. So they can tell those collectors, well, did you know that this clay was created in this way, and the work is about this land and it's made of this land, and isn't that exciting? Because I'm just an awkward
They're your
fool.
salespeople.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just like, oh, they did it from clay and machine. Like, oh, this is so awkward. Like all that ego stuff.
Yeah.
That they don't have. They're just advocates for. They're just so passionate about advocating for their artists, And a good gallery should be doing that. They should be earning their commission.
Percentage.
Bringing those clients, I've
been having this discussion with our distributor lately. a lot of the magazine world still operates on sale or return, which
Must be heartbreaking. When they
we offer a very different rate if the firm sale it to a sale or return rate. We offer a very disadvantaged rate if you do sale or return.
That's smart.
There is some bigger box retailers that won't do that, and that's fine because they serve our mission by getting wild volume in front of people. So that's fine, but they have to be taking wild volume. The sale or return thing, especially in the magazine, it's only available for so long, and it's exactly for that reason. There is no onus on them to sell it because they've not paid it.
That's right, yeah.
Whereas, and they're kind of the same position as you, but at least they want to sell it because they want to make their 50%. Because it's commission based, right?
Yeah,
so they want
and
to be.
They've got very expensive real estate in that inner city, beautiful space.
You've got big incentive to make good money. Let's be honest, off of you, but that's not to say you're not making money off of them as well.
That's right. Yeah,
that can be a good relationship.
Absolutely, it should be symbiotic.
Yeah, that was what I was trying to work out. I was scared I was going to make a mess of it or something. Do you think that's something that more makers and more artists could work towards in a lot of different spaces? It feels like and I certainly know, talking from your experience as a furniture maker, my experience in leather work, your experience in leather work thereafter when you turned it into a profitable company, that we're trying to do it all. We might be trying to do too much. And I'm kind of leading that way. Like, for so long I've encouraged people to do it all, and whenever anyone phones me, and we get a lot of phone calls or DMs or texts, I hope this company never goes global or never goes that well. I do hope it goes massive, but in the course of it going massive, loads of people actually have my number. No. So, because I'm always just, I put my number at the bottom of emails, it doesn't bother me, and a lot of people will text and a lot of people will email and DM and ask about, how are we doing with sales? Like, what's the marketing tactics we're using? And I'm very keen to share all that. And the more I'm listening to this, I'm like, maybe we shouldn't be selling it. Maybe it should be someone else that's selling it. Maybe it should be a salesperson that's selling it. And we should be doing the making bit. Do you know what I mean?
But then nobody knows the product as much as you do in that respect. But
it's a really difficult balance, isn't it?
And also, it's your baby, hey? Yeah. There is a sense of, it feels like risk to give somebody that. But you're talking about, I hope it never gets so big, whatever. But I think eventually you reach a place, don't you? Like, if you continue to grow, the number of hats you have to wear just increase and increase and increase.
That's the position we're at now. Like, because it's a volume-based business.
That's right.
Like, to make a difference in the making space, we have to do wild volume. To do wild volume, we need to negotiate multiple contracts with multiple different people.
Yeah.
Deal with direct-to-consumer sales. Deal with all, and you're wearing too many hats. And I'm aware we're doing that.
Yeah.
We're not printing the paper. You guys are doing the printing of the paper. You're actually making the product, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I think you'll know the answer to that question when you can't do the bit that excites you about what you do anymore. Do you think? So like I don't know what it is for Kate, but like, if you don't get to talk to makers anymore, you don't get to do this, then maybe the time has come, hey?
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'll just want to stop doing it.
You're
like, doesn't matter how big it is and how much money it's bringing in and how great what my mortgage is looking like whatever, because if I hate this because I'm not doing the bit that I like, then there's no point anymore, yeah?
Yeah.
Because it's a passion-driven project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you lose that personal touch. Like, if we were never to do that anymore, then it was... That's how we started.
Yeah. And look, I think you and I are probably quite lucky that we enjoy that marketing stuff. We enjoy that storytelling. We enjoy that, like, engaging with an audience and like putting that out there and, whatever. But a lot of people hate it.
Yeah, I'm very well aware that that's not the norm.
They'd rather hide under a rock and never be seen ever and just be in their little back room of their house making beautiful things and have no one see it, then have to do that.
Do you think there's a world for a marketing or sales intermediary for the making space?
I always wished that it was like the book world, where like you have an idea for, let's say you're a blogger, and you remember that trend where like every blogger released a book, it's like 5,000 followers on Instagram and you released a book, but that thing where you have an agent and your agent makes their money by you doing well, because they're taking a percentage, yeah. So we see that in like the filmmaking world, and we see that in the literature world. There's somebody who's an advocate and an intermediary, and if they do their job well, everybody wins. They help you sell that manuscript, they help you negotiate a great contract. But that doesn't really seem to exist in this world, particularly not in Australia, unless you're already an enormously successful person. Then obviously you're just like a walking ATM.
Does that become the sort of predatory agency? That's a thing. That's a thing where agencies latch, of course they do, it's a business, latch onto people that are very likely to make them high amounts of income. But then there's nothing in the smaller space, is there?
No, there isn't. There are the people with, I mean, like a lot of makers are notorious. I mean, I think it's kind of funny how terrible we are at that bit. Yeah. You must come across people all the time where you're like, oh my gosh, I wish the world knew about you. Let's tell the world about you because you're not doing it and you're amazing. Yeah.
That's one thing that Kate does an absolutely fantastic job of is, in some ways I think it's training the algorithm. In some ways it's just hard hours of searching. And it's finding the 1,000 or 2,000 followers, or the 500 or 600 followers, or the 200,000 followers. Like, that's all inconsequential. It's the quality of the work and the person behind it. That's not the norm. We're all looking at the big accounts, and that doesn't mean they're worth more.
That's right. No, that's just the algorithm.
That's just this weird status thing that we've got going on at the minute in this
space
and time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not like an influencer, don't get me wrong, but I used to have, when I had my kid, before I came back to ceramics, I used to make tiny furniture, right? And like doll's house furniture, basically, 1/12 scale.
That.
Yeah, okay,
Like
it's a woman thing. You know, I don't know why. Maybe you guys like miniature trains or something.
I like
Right?
steam trains and big trucks.
Okay, right. But there's something about that, a lot of people had that visceral response. They're like, oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's quite a big audience for that.
Yeah,
so I did that as a little business for a while. It wasn't very sustainable because I was working on a volume model, right? But what happened was I grew a pretty decent Instagram following. And for context, this was about 2014, 15. Right, so like you could just put up a crappy Instagram, like a phone snap, and gain 1,000 followers in a day in those days. Yeah, this is being bought out by, probably being bought by Facebook, or maybe around that time.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, all that to say, I had got like 14,000 followers in like 6 months or something, right? And I don't know what happened. I think those people forgot to unfollow me when I changed into something else, because that number has just sat there, right?
Right.
Yeah. But other artists who are maybe starting out or like wanting to be in that world a bit more, be more visible, say, how did you do that? And I had to say, it's just a number. Those people are not buying my work. It means nothing. Those are probably dead accounts, you know? Like
possibly.
Like I said, if you're worried about a number, just go and buy a bunch of followers.
Yeah.
Because if what you're saying...
Because you can do that, because we get the note in our inbox most weeks. Yeah.
And it's like, it's not a secret anymore. Like,
No.
Like if you're saying, I want to have a higher follower count because it looks more legitimate to the organizations I want to work with, great, that's a strategy. I get that.
Yes.
But if you're thinking, I will have a better business, or I will be more valid just in general if more people click follow, like that does not equate like income. That does not equate money in my bank account. Maybe once upon a time it did, but it doesn't now. But there is this odd fixation on like that perceived success of this pretty arbitrary number, because like we know, a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. So you might be thinking, look at that artist, they've got 100,000 followers. They might all be bots, you know? They might all be just people that forgot to unfollow, or, you know, whatever.
It's interesting, different people's perspective, because there'll be other people have been like, but like those 100,000 followers, like one person followed me and I got a huge like you know, project.
Value is not necessarily quantity, but it is quality.
Yeah, it's
if the right person follows you, i.e. an interior designer, that one person following you could be worth more than 500,000 people following you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But, or you could just like get that interior designer's phone number.
Go old school.
And reach out.
Or email address and like be like, hello, I do this beautiful thing. Like, you know, I'm not saying like either approach is right. I'm just saying like
There is other approaches.
yeah, there are. And not like people can feel a bit
Don't rely too
paralysed
much
by
on
that.
Instagram. Don't rely too much on getting those followers. Like,
But post loads of cool stuff because that's how Kate and I find you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it has a different, like, I think that's the most wonderful thing about social media is our ability to connect with people in our
We're
communities.
11,000 miles away from home as the crow flies and connected with you through Tara, who found us on Instagram, who found what we do. So like that's cool.
That is really cool.
But that's not your only sales strategy. Alex Hormozzi's got a great book, $100 million leads, and it's 8 strategies. Have you read it?
No,
Or do you
no,
know
but
it?
I'm just nodding like so I look clever. Yes, I know the word.
It's got 8 strategies, and the first 4 is cold outreach, warm outreach, content, and something else. But my point is, content's the third of the 3 strategies. So, like you're saying, find someone's number. Find someone that you think they'd be a good fit to sell my work, and find them.
Yeah.
It's a really, really important thing that
There's
we're
a
talking
lot
about
of
here.
hours you need to put into to just reach out to people. Yeah,
Oh,
nothing
it's
might come
exhausting.
back, but like you just need to keep trying because one
That's
day.
right.
Remember when I
That's
started doing
right.
our ad sales?
Yeah.
I done like 142 emails one day.
That's insane.
I was broken
like
by
one
the end of
person
it.
got
One
back to
person
you.
got back to me. I was
But do you
broken.
know what?
I was absolutely broken. And I
need
got
to
up the next
be-
day and done another 60.
You have
And
to
then I
just
was
get
really
used
broken.
You have to get used to rejection because it does happen. And like,
Yes.
all
All the time. All it's heartbreaking, but it's constant.
it's hard to not take it personally because you're like,
Because it's your work, it's your
Yeah.
life.
I once listened to a podcast by a woman called Tiffany Hahn, and I think it's called Raise Your Hand, Say Yes, but it's about saying yes before you're ready and like figuring it out. Hey, but she was doing a project that she called 100 Rejection Letters. So she had a manuscript and she was trying to get like a publishing house, and she was like being so heartbroken by the rejection. She's like, I'm going to shift my perspective. I'm going to aim to get 100 rejection letters. So it shifted her from, instead of like putting all this like emphasis and heartbreak on like not getting one response, if I just put it out and I just keep putting it out and I keep putting, and every time I get a no, I'm like, yay, I'm going to put it in my little pile because I'm closer to a yes, closer to a yes. And I was like, I mean, maybe that's a bit idealistic because the heartbreak still exists. But
I understand the
actually,
concept.
like taking the pressure off that and like being like, yeah, give me another rejection because it means I did the work.
yes,
Like I
put
put
the
myself
work in.
out and I was
Yes.
vulnerable and go me.
Yes, yes.
And I'm going to do it again because
so
I haven't
true.
reached my goal of 100 yet,
Yeah.
What's she doing when she got to 100?
I don't know. I don't listen.
Yeah, the first 100 people, have rejected her, and she's like, "All right, I got to 100.
Whoops.
No, I've no further
Guess we'll make
followers."
it 200
Yeah. Have you had to deal with that rejection?
all the time.
How
oh
do
my
you?
God. I cry a lot. But something I've found is like I had a lot of rejection, like heaps of it lately. But when you do get a win, they all seem to happen all at once.
You said that the other day.
And then you're like, what the hell am I going to do? How am I going to... Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm in that stage now where I feel like I had 6 months of like things I thought were a shoo-in. Things I was like, oh, come on. Like, are you serious? Like, whatever. Can't believe they said no to me. Like, and they chose Mary down the road who makes that ugly thing. That thing.
Yeah.
But then, I had a few wins, but they all just came at once. And I was like, you just have to make it work, don't you?
Yeah, just have to just keep going.
Yeah, but I'm about to enter the cycle again of like the vulnerability piece of like putting it out there. Okay, put it out there. Just put it out there. Because often the lead times on these things, even if you do get a good thing, it might be like you just saw my show in the art gallery of Ballarat, but I got that 18 months ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
As long as that.
As
okay.
long as that. And like when you're working with larger institutions, they work years and years out.
Well, it's the same as when we were reaching out to people to do work. It's like you have to build that relationship and just like...
Because you won't be in their budget for that year.
No.
You
No,
might
that's
get a little
right.
bit out of them out of their budget for the next year. It's very rare that they've got budget left and you can negotiate a deal. But that's not the normal, especially because obviously our big money item is selling advertising space.
So it's like making your clay ahead of time. Right?
Yeah.
You've got to get ahead. You've got to be thinking, okay, well, what's going to happen in 2026? And let's put out the feelers for that.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah,
And what do you do in that instance? Do you just bet on yourself?
I don't know. I'm just on a wing and a prayer, man. Like, I don't know. No, I mean, I'm expecting a rejection this week. Yeah.
Right.
Is it nearly the 30th of the month? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I applied for a fellowship. It's very competitive. I want to go. I pitched this research project to go to the UK and meet other makers who are doing this thing of, digging the clay from the earth. There's one woman in London who took a bunch of clay that was dug out of one of the tunnels. They're making these new railway stations. Or it was a tunnel under the Thames, eh?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And then she made a body of work out of this. And I'm like, I just want to go hang out with my nerds, my fellow nerdy clay people. And I just want to learn all this information. And then I want to bring it back here and tell everybody who will listen all about what I discovered, so that everybody can do this thing. But there's no way in hell I'm getting accepted for this, hey? Like, they have this thing where it's like, people often apply for like 3 years in a row before there's like 1,000 applications, 100 allocations. But I'm like,
never
no.
know.
You just never know.
You've applied, haven't you? And you've done the
Yeah.
thing. You've not just been like, I'll not get it, so I'm not going to bother.
Or as Aussies would say, you've got to be in it to win it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I keep my fingers crossed for you, though.
Thanks, because it was like 3 days of sitting at the computer, and I hate sitting at the computer.
Yeah.
It's a long application.
It's like all the things, and like, I feel like, you're a great writer, yeah. Yes, you are. I own that. But like, I make this analogy of like, artists often and makers have to write about their work, and it's painful. Like, it really can be. It's like asking a prize-winning novelist to like draw pictures to illustrate their book.
Yeah.
They'd be like, are you kidding me? That's just embarrassing. Yeah. But I'm like, but you have to do it, and but it's painful stuff. So the putting yourself out there, the applying for things, the artist statements, the statement about the work, or like the proposal or the pitch is like not only really vulnerable, but often not our skill set. Like,
Yeah.
so it can be so easy to just be like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah. But sometimes you could I sometimes write too much and like trying to...
Overcook it, sort of. Yeah, I do that too.
You're like, I'm babbling now. Like, what am I talking about?
But that's why you find, like, I write bullet points.
Yeah, so
So somewhere in the middle is pretty good.
Like,
Yeah, it's either
points.
that or it's engineering reports. It's like this is this is this is this. So somewhere in the middle it works.
Yeah.
But it's something we've never really done, is applied for funding. Because usually it comes with constrictions.
Yes.
We're obviously global, not local, etc., etc. And one of the other reasons is I wanted to build this into a profitable company without, and a little bit of ego involved there, I'm not going to steer away from it, but as a marker to other creative people that it can be done.
Yeah.
You can build it from nothing. So it's not something we've spent lots of time on. We've looked at some stuff. Never
We
really...
applied to a few like film things.
Yeah, we applied for some film stuff. Not heard back
But
from
maybe
that.
your version of that is contacting those distributors. Like,
Yeah,
you make
yeah,
it
okay.
sound like it's easy, but I bet there are some people where you're like, I'm going to get my big boy pants on, and I am going to like be brave, and I am going to email that person. And, if it's something that it feels like there's something riding on it, and you have to be like brave to do it, you know. Like, maybe
But
that's
more so on the phone. Like, I don't mind really phoning anyone, but I don't like selling people stuff over the phone. I find it all like, ugh.
Yeah.
it's icky,
Yeah.
innit?
You're like trying to sell this thing and you're like, it's really, 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 really good.
I don't like talking to anyone on the phone. I'm like, I don't answer
I
my
love
phone.
talking to people on
Do
the
you know
phone.
what?
I
That
hate
is a
texting.
thing. Not,
It is,
and that's me. And
Yeah.
he doesn't believe it. Like,
I don't understand.
It is a thing. It's very common. It makes you so anxious you would not believe. And I was
Really?
like, sorry I didn't. I'll text back. Sorry I didn't answer the phone. My hands are covered in clay. I'm like, really, I just had deep crippling anxiety. So see?
And clearly my hands aren't covered in clay because I just text you.
Oh no, busted! I'm gonna rethink my strategy.
You just need to like say "Hey Siri" at the start of every text. So it sounds like that's the only way to do it. The only thing that's kind of, and I've had way more success on selling ads over the phone, or even putting us in shops over the phone, than I have over email. And it's because I heard this one line once: is, if you have a truly great product, you're doing the world a disservice not telling them about it.
Yeah. 100%.
And I was like,
People can
all right,
get
we've got a truly great product now. I still don't like doing the salesy thing though, where I'm like, it's this much, and I'm not a pushy salesperson. I'm just like, this is what we've got, and this is what it is.
Because like, there's a lot of value there, but it's trying to tell them that there's a lot of value there, and you don't want to waste their time if they're not interested. And
you're also so close to it, right? Like you say, there's so much value there, but you're here. So you see it all kind of spread out, and you need someone to just cut through, which is what it sounds like your interior designers are great at doing for you. They're just like, these are the sales points, this is what I'm going for.
Yeah, and I had so much discomfort. I mean, I'm referring to this, a piece that was bought by the client for the photo shoot. Like, I had crippling anxiety when I had to reply to that email with the price. Like, putting that number out there felt like intense discomfort. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, like, should I be doing trade prices on this because I'm not paying a commission? And like, I really was paralyzed by it, and I could have quite easily self-sabotaged on that, but I was like, suck it up, girlie, just press send, you know what I mean? Because it's just a number, and it's like, that's, why am I agonizing over the value when I know the value? Like, I know the value, just say the value. But you're right, you are so close that it's often the people around you that are like, I think for makers as well, it's the people who do get it, who love you, and who like your greatest supporters, who are often actually way better at selling your work. I see that all the time. I'm like, I met you in this little pop-up shop. Yeah. And every time someone went near my work, I'd be like, ew, that's mine. They'd be like, did you make this? I'd be like, yes, But like the other person on shift would be like, yes, and blah, 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 blah. And isn't it wonderful? And you should buy it. And yeah, take it home. It's yours, But I really struggled to do that. So it talked about identify gaps in the business.
It's so true, because I did that as well. I was, I'm like,
cringy.
That's mine.
Please don't look at it.
Yeah.
Whereas
but I wanted to buy it.
Look at it and buy 20 copies. And isn't she marvellous?
And I think that might be a lot of it. I don't get involved with making the book almost at all. Like Kate does that, keeps the product.
I love that you call it a book. Yeah. Because that's not a Glaswegian colloquialism, is it? It's like, you don't call magazines books, do you?
Well, the bookazine
it's just a hard,
publication.
it's a bookazine publication book.
But the fact that you call it a book, it's like automatically elevated in my mind.
Yeah,
it's
so we've been fighting this for a while.
That is a fancy thing.
Yeah.
That is not something that I flick through and put in the recycling bin.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not.
I'd
be offended if someone did that.
Well, now I know you in person, I'll have to keep them forever.
It's good to hear you say that, because we've been fighting with this for a while, because it sits in, you can't use bookazine because only magazine book nerds know what a bookazine is.
I was like, yeah, what's a book?
Exactly, right? It's like a book formatted magazine. So you can't really use that. It's not a book because it's not a one-off. It's not a magazine because it's just a much higher quality, bigger thing. It's quarterly, it's not weekly, it's not monthly.
It feels different.
Yeah, it feels different, right?
Coffee table book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a coffee table book, which is a bit of a mouthful when you're trying to market it. So yeah, I don't know how we. I might just start slipping in book and just rolling my book for now.
Yeah, well, you got my permission. It worked on me.
Oh. That's all the permission I need.
Yeah, that's great.
That's all the permission I need.
I feel like we could talk about this forever.
We could.
But that would be very boring to listen to.
So let's wrap up on the last few questions.
Okay.
What would you do if you knew?
Let's try.
Here we go.
What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail?
Oh my God.
Yeah, all your dreams come true. Like,
I'll get back to you next Tuesday on that. What? That is a crazy question. You've just imploded, like my brain's just exploded. What if I couldn't fail? I know the answer to this. Okay, so I have a 5-year goal. Okay. This is very off-brand for me because I'm winging it a lot, yeah? But last year, I have a now 9-year-old kid with autism and ADHD and like all the isms, yeah? So they're a high needs kid. And I'm like, they're 9. I've dedicated nearly a decade of my life to like keeping this human alive and happy and healthy, yeah? And at the same time, my husband got a new job. So he's a trained mechanic, not creative, like, so different to me, like super down to earth. But thanks to the patriarchy, he gets paid quite well for what he does. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he tinkers with trains. He's all manly, and then, and they're like, have a lovely paycheck. right? So he started doing that, and I was like, oh, there's a window of opportunity here for me. Like, it has been my dream since I was 5 to be an artist, like to be a successful artist, actually. I'm going to rephrase that. To have my art in fancy flipping art galleries around the world, and people just like clambering over themselves just to collect these pieces. Yeah, because that's what it looks like to a 5-year-old. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I am going to negotiated with my husband. I was going to take a year to just like not hustle. Because I was doing like teaching at the university, and I was doing classes in my studio, and I was just doing all the things. Yeah. And I was like, that's great because it brings in the revenue, but it's kind of exhausting, and I don't have space for my art, for my creativity. So I negotiated a year. I was like, I'm going to take a year, and I'm just going to like live in my shed, which is the studio in the back garden. Like, hang on. Yeah, a studio, which is a shed in the back garden. I'm going to live in there for a year. And I'm going to just make art, and I'm going to like try my hardest to make this dream happen, right?
Yeah.
So we're 18 months into this process now. So obviously the year worked out just in time.
Just in time, yeah.
That I was able to like leverage that into a bit more time. So 18 months ago, I set this goal. I was like, I want to have work in the permanent collection of the National Gallery of Victoria, which is this fancy art institution in Melbourne. Beautiful collection. They show amazing work from world-class artists, So it's a real stretch, that dream, that goal. And to answer your question, I would be pursuing that a lot more aggressively, and I would be making that goal happen like tomorrow. I would be calling that curator tomorrow, But because I'm laden with fear and anxiety and like feelings of not being good enough.
Have you got the curator's number?
No, but, I'm pretty sure I could figure out their email.
Little inside
So
trader
it's
there.
like first initial, full stop, last name at TV or whatever. Yeah, that would be it. Because what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no.
I mean, your work is pretty special.
Thank you. I think so. But instead of doing that, I've been taking a sneaky approach. I've been applying for things that are not in there, but they curate, like Melbourne Design Week, and I've been
So you've been on the radar.
I'm trying to get on the radar. I'm trying to plant some little seeds. I've had a work acquired by the Art Gallery of Ballarat, which I was thrilled to bits about. But that is all to, I pushed for that. I was like, would you like to have a pot? Pick a pot, any pot. Please take that one. Because to get that goal, it's not like a clear roadmap, but I think I probably have to have work in other public collections and regional galleries.
Seen that your work's already out there and it's been showcased. Yeah.
So I've been doing that, but I actually think I would just be bold and I would be visible and I would be brave and not wait for 5 years.
Yeah.
And hope that it happens.
So you would do the same thing, but you wouldn't wait 5 years and hope.
I wouldn't spend 5 years hiding in my shed.
But you're still doing the same thing, which is cool. Because there's a lot of people that would do something. Very few people that ask that would do something different from their craft because they all absolutely love what they're doing. But they would do something radically different in the way they get it out there.
Yeah.
So the fact you would just speed things up and be a bit braver
says
a lot.
Because I could tick that off and then aim higher,
Yeah.
Because it's I think I've probably given myself 5 years because it feels safe.
Okay.
Not because I need 5 years, but because it's if I delay that scary thing enough, I might be brave enough, hey?
Do you want me to phone them for you?
Yes,
Get the number,
please,
I'll phone them. I'm like, and no makers. We've spoke to loads of them. You need this.
This is Steph's agent.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a gap in the market.
I also know where you live. Make sure it's in there next week. Kate, final question.
Yeah, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, I feel so sad for my younger self.
Oh, really?
I really do. I feel like she's just so filled with angst and self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
That's a shame.
Yeah, I feel like there's a certain power in being middle-aged where you just don't give an F anymore about what people think about you.
It's true. I wish I could tell my younger self to stop worrying too much about what everybody else is saying because it doesn't matter when you grow up.
No, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. What would I tell her? Yeah, like, not to worry. I mean, it's easy to say, don't worry too much.
Yeah, because
I can say it to myself right now, but it doesn't really help, does it?
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
But I think actually to like really believe that, like, you know you're good at what you do. Like, stop doubting that. Because, I mean, I still do that, but I feel like I've done the work to, like, take action anyway. But I think I was paralysed by, like, not feeling like I was good enough. So, like, maybe we've talked about this gap in my career of working in this medium. I think a lot of that was, like, hey, poor mental health, but also, like, being riddled with self-doubt. Yeah, be like, nobody really cares what you're doing, so stop worrying about it, and just do the thing and believe that you're good at it, and like
Trust the process.
Trust the process.
I know it's a bit cliche, but it does,
Yeah, so many people have said something of the same ilk, and what I've never really asked before until it's kind of clicked now is, that's what you would say to your younger self, but how would you say to do it?
What do you mean? Oh, yeah, right.
Because that's the thing, right? Like, we'd all say that to our younger self.
Say, don't worry. Like, how?
Yeah.
I'm riddled with worry.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do we stop worrying? Do we just do the thing? Yeah, of course we just do the thing, but...
Yeah, but we've got the value of hindsight. I mean, we've got, like...
Hindsight's 20/20 every time, right?
Absolutely. Like, I know it's going to work out. Oh, and then maybe the second piece of advice would be, like, marry a tradie.
Move to Oz and marry a trainer.
That's right, yeah. Find that trade mechanic so you can live in your shed.
Fair?
Like it.
But yeah, the how. Yeah, the how. That's very true. I'm just like, trust me, babe. Trust me. Be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a bit of that. There is a bit of just, like, trust isn't
yourself. There? Yeah.
If you're willing to put in the work and the time, then something's
And
going to
putting in the work is a joy, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the easy bit, isn't it, really?
It's a buffer. You need a buffer, don't you? You need a buffer of time or a buffer of income, and that's where actually the paid education system's kind of backwards, because that's detracting from, again, I'm talking financial now because that's what the world seems to link to success. That's detracting from the financial getting ahead. You kind of need that buffer. The 12 months knowing your bills are paid, the 24 months knowing your bills, whatever that buffer is.
Yeah.
Whether it's like your husband being a tradie, something like that.
Yeah.
And of course, he's a tradie, loves his job. We've been speaking to him a lot over the last couple of days. But
Oh, he loves to talk, yeah.
that is great. But that's obviously giving you the buffer to... You may be the main breadwinner in the house in 12 months' time because of what you've been doing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean... So, like, when Kate started this, I was working full-time for 3.5 years while you started this, because shock horror, printed products are inordinately expensive to get a company off the ground with printed products. So you need a buffer somewhere. You need to find that buffer.
And I think there's no coincidence that, like, people who are quote-unquote successful often come from generational wealth.
Yes.
Because they're born with a buffer.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's obviously... And saying that is not to detract from the real outliers that absolutely grind and get there, but the generality is from generational wealth.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a correlation there. Yeah, of course, I'm not diminishing anybody's
No,
hard work
absolutely,
in saying
absolutely.
that. But, like, yeah, unless you're born with a buffer, what does that look like? You know what I mean?
Yeah. What does that buffer look like?
Yeah, that's right. And how do you gain that buffer? And to be honest, I reckon that's a day job for a lot of people. It's like they have a daily grind so that they can do the thing they're really passionate about. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you get caught in that catch-22 if you're so exhausted by the daily grind.
Yeah,
that you got no energy for the thing that truly lights you up,
Yeah.
What if university and art school taught your first module on how to set up an online store and get your stuff out
I
there?
think university and art school probably doesn't even tell you. Like, I think there's very little business education.
There was none in ours.
It's like,
We had 3 days.
3 days of it.
Or a
and
4-year
I think
course.
there's probably a lot more than other people get. Like, a lot of
Quite
people
possibly.
get, like...
Yeah, 3 days.
And this was not long after them telling us, a class of 20, that there's like 30 other design courses in the UK and there's maybe 10 jobs.
You're like, so why am I doing this course?
Oh
like,
my God, isn't that
Cheers.
depressing? Thank you.
So it's like,
money's
we
well
have
spent.
identified the problem and now you're getting 3 whole days to work out how to solve it. Do you know what I mean? Because you're basically saying there's no jobs, you'll need to set up your own thing.
And they never told you to set up your own, like, we were never encouraged to do
and you're
that.
not equipped to set up your own thing. And honestly, most people come out of university as a kid. That is still like
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
very young
Yeah,
person.
what am I doing? What am I doing with my life?
My life choices. But yeah, I mean, I think the two go hand in hand, don't they? Like having the business skills and in the learning process, figuring out if that's actually for you. Because you kind of got to be in it sometimes to work it out. And you might be like, actually, that day job's looking really great right now. Like,
Yeah, you fail a lot to be successful.
yeah.
To fail. You
Yeah.
have to be doing it to fail.
Yeah.
It's a hard question to answer. It's a hard question to answer, but
Don't
it
think
needs
anybody
some change. It definitely needs some change. We can certainly conclude on that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, with potential for change or need for change comes opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, I really think that world is ripe for the picking for private enterprise.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, pottery studios and mini little schools around the country are absolutely thriving. It's just not an accredited thing. Like, there are a million people taking pottery classes at the weekends, yeah. But like, that next level of education, the gap is missing between like proficiency and excellence. Is a very big gap, and it's specialised knowledge
That not everyone can access to.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I feel like I've come back exactly to where we started.
Yeah.
I was like, do not
we're
really
done.
answer.
Still trying to solve the world's problems.
Yeah, Kate and I's dinner table's a pretty intense place.
Yeah.
So's all of our car journeys, all of our train journeys, and all of our plane journeys.
You wake up in the middle of the night. Actually, Kate, I was just thinking about that education crisis.
Yeah.
She'll usually wake up because it's my phone on, or I'll wake up because it's her phone on, and it's usually about something like that. Whether it's just a general. I don't want to say crisis because I don't want to feel like we're in a crisis yet. I just think we're heading for it. It's just I think it can be turned around. Yeah. Having heard what we heard this week, there's clearly governmental bodies looking to change it.
Yeah.
Whether they can or whether they're too far detached from it, I don't know the answer yet, but the conversations are happening, right? Anyway, let's wrap it up.
Yeah, we've had
Thank you so much for your time.
it's been,
Oh my God, I had an absolute blast.
Good,
yeah,
I'm
good.
glad.
This is so fun. You hang out with me again tomorrow.
We'll be across the road at Brian Cushie's. We'll do a barbecue or something.
Yeah. It's fabulous. We've had a great time.
Awesome.